Welcome to today's Masterclass, XenServer in 2026, where it fits and how to use what you already own. Today, I am so excited to introduce our panelists. That would be Richard Faulkner, goodness, with the Ferroque Systems and Ashley Davies with Cloud Software Group.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here too.
All righty, well, I'll go ahead and pass it to Richard to introduce a little bit about Ferroque Systems and get started with today's agenda.
Okay, well, thank you. So today, first I'd like to introduce Ferroque Systems. For those of you who are not familiar with our company, we are a services company that's dealt quite a bit with primarily Citrix, but a lot of their anything to do with end user computing. We work with all of your end user computing needs. In fact, we call ourselves the masters in end user computing. We've worked with Citrix heavily, and we have several engineers, some of the best talent in the business that works for Oak Systems. So we go on today. We're going to talk about XenServer in 2026. And let's go on to the next one. Yeah, and we're going to go through our agenda for today. First, we're going to talk a little bit about XenServer, where it's been, what we've been doing with it, and so forth, what kind of adoptions. And then we're going to get into some of the vision, the roadmap, where XenServer is going on in the future. And Ashley's going to give us a lot of good information on what the plans are, where they're going with that, and how well it's being adopted across the industry. He's also going to give us a live demo today of some of the capabilities of XenServer, specifically the conversion manager to help you migrate from VMware over to XenServer. Once that's done, I'm going to discuss a case study of an environment that we actually migrated for a customer's very large environment. And then finally, we'll go through some lessons learned and where we should go from here. With that, I'll turn it over to Ashley to go ahead and get us started. Oh, wait, that's right. We got a polling question. I forgot. What is for those of you who are on the webinar, if you wouldn't mind answering the polling question there, what is your primary virtualization platform today? If you can let us know, we'd appreciate it.
The answers are rolling in.
Yeah.
Thank you all
I
for
can't vote. Why can't I
participating.
vote? I don't understand. I'm sure Ashley would love to vote, right? So, I
Maybe
mean,
a
we're
little
we're
more.
definitely seeing a lot of requests for different virtualization platforms and so forth, and there's so many others that are jumping in as well that you know VMware's kind of opened up an opportunity for other vendors to hop in to the environment and be utilized.
Yep. Speaking of that, VMware is over here at 50%, and that is split with mixed environment and XenServer. Just a couple with Nutanix.
Okay, I appreciate
Interesting.
it.
Yeah, we're always interested to find out what the lie of the land is with customers. Interesting. Hyper-V as well does come up from time to time, but good to see the poll results. Great. I think this over to me then, Richard. Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll talk about XenServer from a product perspective in terms of, as Richard mentioned, the customer landscape. So there's a few comments around that. So from our perspective, that's in the Citrix XenServer aspect. What we're seeing here is the on-prem sort of platform hypervisors no longer a specific commodity play sort of for potential VMware replacement. It's becoming a much more sort of in-depth analysis around why customers are moving their kind of core platforms. Obviously, customers are kind of seeking alternatives, to their predominantly VMware environments without being, hit by prohibitive kind of costs, which is one of the kind of the key drivers for the analysis and the research. They also expect, some what I call tier one sort of hypervisor features, that are sort of core to any hypervisor platform. And that's something we get involved with from a Citrix kind of product management perspective in terms of working with our customers and our Citrix teams and our partners, such as today with Ferroque, to understand what those requirements are and start ingesting them and putting them into the product. I think it's also fair to say that XenServer can fill that gap really around in terms of commercial entitlement. It's part of the Citrix licensing bundle, so it makes it extremely attractive to Citrix customers that are part of kind of Citrix blended license bundles, CPLs, etc., UHMCs. But we do have a set of core hypervisor feature sets. So I think in many respects, XenServer is kind of rising a little bit up the priority channel for a lot of our customers, and we're talking daily to customers of all different sizes, different sectors around what the requirements are. So just a really statement really around the sort of hypervisor on-prem landscape is in some respects restricted. There are a number of players, and we talked about them in the poll. We'd like to think that XenServer is one of the kind of potential great options to those customers migrating away from, if it is their sort of long-standing hypervisor. So that'll be the main points. I guess that leads to another polling question, I think, in terms of obvious question: are you evaluating alternatives to VMware? What are your timelines for that? Is it urgent? Are you just kind of doing some initial exploratory analysis? Is it a definite no, or have you actually made the jump? Is anyone XenServer or somebody else?
And Ashley, I'm not sure if you've seen, but we've definitely seen a lot of people. One of the biggest triggers that comes up on this is when the licensing renewal comes due, right? And that's when we're starting to see a lot of customers who are asking the question of, okay, do I need to stay on VMware, or would it be worthwhile to look at some other alternatives and other places that we might look at deploying?
Yeah, I think good point there, Richard. I mean, ultimately, the trigger for all customers with these license renewals, or vendors are kind of locked into kind of license renewal cycles, and hypervisors and they're different. So that's really the trigger. Even if it's kind of 6 months or 9 months ahead of kind of renewal, that'll be something where it's potentially something to look into as an alternative. So that's where we're seeing a lot of interest.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that if you're going to look at it, unlike the customer we're going to discuss later, try and look at it a little bit further in advance than when the licensing is coming due. So.
Yes, and it looks like the majority of our attendees here are exploring their options, and then in second, they are urgently seeking an alternative.
Okay, great stuff. So let's talk a little bit around sort of XenServer's market adoption. This is one of the kind of the key questions we get when we talk to customers, directly or indirectly. They're wanting to establish, I guess, the credibility of XenServer as kind of a key player in the market. Clearly, we're not going to have the scope and reach of the predominant sort of market number one, which I'm more familiar with at VMware. But XenServer is probably underestimated in terms of its kind of adoption statistics. So I pulled together a slide here with one of my colleagues around organizational breakdown in terms of sizing. So you can see here some of the key stats are, the XenServer customer base is now sort of over 2,000 organizations in the so-called enterprise market. That doesn't cover, of course, all of what they class as non-enterprise. So we've got many other thousands of customers, but that's certainly from a kind of a sort of focus perspective around delivery of features. And you can see here some kind of breakdowns in the columns. A number of virtual machines managers, 500,000 plus across all different sectors. Healthcare is one of the key sort of target sectors, but we're being successful in financial, IT services, cloud provider, governmental sectors as well, increasing kind of certifications. And you can see here, obviously, from the reason we're talking today, and in context with Richard, the number of VDAs that are managed are, it's 400,000, which is increasing. And we're seeing that in our telemetry data as well, which we're encompassing more and more into kind of our product design portfolios. We've got some nice deployments here, 11,000 VMs, 1,500 hosts. I think that's one of the key questions a lot of customers ask. They still see XenServer perhaps as an SMB type play, but actually, historically, XenServer has been successful, just hasn't really marketed it too well. So a great opportunity today to sort of talk about that. And then, host sizing. So, organizations with 100 plus hosts, depending if you regard that as a large environment, maybe by VMware standards not, but certainly, these are sizable organizations in different sectors. See here split across all the geos, US, EU, etc. So, we're covering from a global perspective, and the three boxes at the bottom really talk about migration. So obviously that's the key aspect of today's discussion. We've got 1,000 customers migrated. In some respects, I guess most of it will be a migration because most customers aren't starting from scratch when it comes to hypervisors. So it's pretty much an in situ transfer. So we talked a bit about hosting and Epic applications. It's one of the key target areas for healthcare. So we've got a huge penetration in some of the SaaS hosting arenas to do with Epic, and we've got a number of medical providers, predominantly US based, but also in EMEA and APAC, and then VDI as well. So we've got a number of kind of GPU empowered VDI, and Richard will talk about that in terms of the context of what's going on with the reference customer. So yeah, this is kind of just a snapshot really of where we're sitting in the market adoption, just to give a feel, I think, to those that attend the webinar that we are a serious and credible player in the enterprise space. So yeah, certainly engage with us and Ferroque, whatever, around understanding more, for more information. So I just want to talk a little about the changes last year in 2025. Obviously, it was a big year for us. It was quite interesting, actually, I joined the organization at sort of end of 2023. The change really in terms of the sort of focus around kind of CVAD and what I call virtualization or non-CVAD workloads. So in 2025, there were a lot of discussions with customers. We had a lot of feedback at events, conferences, one-to-ones, sort of customer seminars, etc., that we needed to change our philosophy around the support stance. So it was quite important here that we kind of adopted that and thought of a way basically how to sort of replay back to the market. So originally support was very pivoted during 2024 and early 25 towards the desktop VDI CVAD use case. That presented a lot of problems with customers basically having a question mark against that, going, but from a support perspective, how do I support workloads which are non-CVAD? I might want to potentially migrate large swathes in my state, which will include non-CVAD workloads. I want an equivalence from a support perspective. So it took a while for us to convince the senior leadership, but we made a statement, as you can see here on our blog site, around changing the support stance to be much more kind of uniform. So it means now we can broaden that platform relevance for all enterprise workloads, so things like SQL databases, etc. Core infrastructure for CVAD is all covered now under the standard support contract. And that really gives customer confidence, literally, that XenServer is potentially might have been looked at as a CVAD-only hypervisor, but naturally, no, we're able to tackle all kinds of workloads. And we've got a number of customers that have been hosting what we call server virtualization workloads for many years successfully. But again, there was sort of change in focus around the 23-24 timeframe. So no, even balance that that situation out. So it means we've now got product use case expansion. We talked about the stats side in the previous slide. We're seeing a sort of direct effect of that change of stance in 2025. So hopefully that gives a bit of an indication. We do listen to our customers, as well as kind of rolling out features. We changed the sort of support models around it to suit expectations really. If customers are moving from an enterprise class, otherwise they need an enterprise class support model as well behind it. So that's really the ethos of this slide. If you want to make comments about that, Richard.
If I could interrupt for just a second, Ashley, I'm sorry. I messed up at the beginning. I should have let everybody know. We do have a Q&A panel. If you have questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to insert those questions there, and we will try to address them as we go through the webinar today. Sorry for interrupting you there, Ashley.
No problem. No, Richard, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, ask all questions there. Great opportunity to pick the brains myself and Richard over on this webinar as well. So happy to answer general questions around the topics discussed and any of those you might want to raise. So let's just talk a bit about kind of strategic development plans. Everyone's interested in kind of the here and now. Where are we going from a XenServer perspective? It's obviously core to many customers. Ultimately, when customers are thinking about hypervisor choices or any core platform choice, whether it's infrastructure, storage, networking, server, etc., core infrastructure delivery plans, I want to know about with the next sort of 2 to 3 years, roughly, potentially longer. Yeah, so we do have a sort of philosophy around where we're going to invest. Our investment themes are really centered around kind of 3 major topics. We've got performance enhancements. So there was some sort of attestations around that in the latest XenServer 9, which that's on preview. We'll talk about that later. That's been released last week for the general availability release in the middle of this year. Management as well, a big part of our philosophy around that. We're very aware of the feedback from customers around the current management model, which is Windows XenCenter based sort of distributed client-based model compared to other hypervisors. So there's a big program of work ongoing around looking at that, and we've got a full program management wrap to refresh our management interface basically at the moment. So that's more from the UI perspective. Obviously, we'll still maintain all the CLI, SDK kind of management models as well. So that's a big focus for us. Ecosystem is probably the third one. People look at that and go, ecosystem, what does that mean? We're talking about this in the context of what I call adjacent technologies. So things like backup, disaster recovery, automation, security, all the things that hypervisors have to integrate within a modern data center management type model. So that's something that I think it's frank to say XenServer has lagged. Perhaps some of the hypervisors in the market over the last few years. So there's a big focus using some of our existing partner management engineering management contacts and also kind of direct contacts with backup vendors, security vendors, to put XenServer back on the map in terms of a critical path for them. Up till now, they haven't been proactively kind of contacted, so it's a bit of a change for them. So, those are some of our kind of top line investment themes. Hopefully, you'll see the fruition of those in terms of some of the features that come out, and we'll talk a bit about how that's being handled. But yeah, maintaining and enhance the core platform, again, always very important. So we need to make sure that the platform itself is always maintained, secured, and patched accordingly, and we're not suffering any kind of major outages. So that's obviously a kind of a fourth part of that as well. So yeah, those are our investment themes. I'm sure if you have any questions on that, please pop them in the Q&A, as Richard said, and we'll answer them later. I wanted to talk a bit around the innovation velocity as well, a little bit different to perhaps some of the other hypervisor vendors and also some of the Citrix product lines as well. So XenServer about a year ago adopted this kind of streaming release model. In the traditional world, used to have, I'm sure you're all familiar, things like long-term service releases, LTSRs. We had continuous releases, CRs, all these acronyms that I joined thinking, why is this quite complicated? So I think in the end, combinations of kind of market precedents, engineering desire, etc., and kind of product management release strategy. But we moved to this smaller, sort of more agile release model. So it means we now stream, certainly the 8.4 release we've got now, all patches, updates, features are streamed out. There is an offline option as well, obviously for those that can't connect to the internet. But what we found is when we're doing this, it means that we don't have to do the large monolithic releases. It means we can release features more quickly. It's got more of a short burst model. Customers can kind of look at those features and kind of take them in an early advanced mode. They don't want to deploy them in live, and they've got options around that. So this means hopefully for us, it means we're translating a lot more value to the customer by getting kind of features out there much more quickly. So it's really an innovation sort of adoption play, I think, from our perspective.
Now, I was going to interject and say that one of the things that I've enjoyed in the later releases, the 8.4 version of XenServer, is the ease of running updates, being able to get notified when they're out there, schedule how I want to get them done, let everything roll out. It's definitely, I've seen a large improvement in the ability to just update XenServer. So I do appreciate those efforts.
Right. Okay. Hopefully that's representative, Richard, of all our customers as well. So no one's pushed back, I'll be honest, and said this is a terrible idea. Please revert back to the previous model. So we take that as a positive. So yeah, hopefully they'll make continue. It'd be interesting to see whether the rest of the kind of Citrix product lines as well kind of look at this as a viable option and start to shift their delivery. But every product's different, so it works for us. So it's good. And then really just to comment really from the sort of XenServer, the perspective really, there's sort of good enough alternative a little bit. So many people perhaps look at XenServer and think it's not really good enough, doesn't really meet my enterprise needs. But as we're having more and more interactions, EBCs, etc., kind of customer conferences, partner events, we're getting the feedback that XenServer has been around and understood for a long time. Things like the simplicity, the ease of use of it. Ultimately, Richard will talk about the design considerations. There are always design considerations. It's not VMware, so it's important to understand where some of the kind of optimizations come in. The fact that we integrate with Citrix in terms of some of the CVAD, things like PBS Accelerator, IntelliCaching, etc., MCS integration as well, that kind of sets us apart from the hypervisors. Clearly, the big one for many customers and the big dollar sign is cost savings. So back to where we started, ultimately the driver for XenServer the last 18 months, 2 years. Some of the Broadcom changes, for example, has been around renewals of software. Software renewals now are part of the Citrix portfolio. There's no net increase in inverted commas for the hypervisor component. It makes us kind of embedded inside Citrix's kind of licensing model, and then this expanded partnerships model as well. So we are hugely focusing on that. That's kind of a management directive as well to improve our relationships with our kind of key partners. So across these kind of 4 areas, there are others below that, but these are top line items for us to make XenServer exactly sort of credible in the eyes of our customer and potential future customer base, and give us kind of that sort of that push to the next level. So I'll talk a little bit around where we're going as well. So XenServer 9, kind of next generation platform. We've got a roadmap. Obviously, normally we talk about specifics of roadmaps under NDA, so I'll just talk about kind of our philosophies really around how we see customers kind of upgrading here. So what's new in XenServer 9? So brackets now in preview. So last week on Thursday, we released the preview. So it's now available on our download site. So you can go and pull down a copy of that. So the fact it's preview means it's non-production ready. So it's effectively kind of a pre-release. which will give us kind of a 3-month sort of run rate, really, approximately to release this before general availability. But some of the features that come with that, we've modernized the core platform itself, so I won't talk about all the details, but some of the key platform components of the Xen, spared the DOM zero, the Xen user space, etc. The actual core hypervisor componentry, whatever its dependencies in the open source have been upgraded. That'll mean we don't have to go through this kind of process again. XenServer 10, potentially even XenServer 11 when that comes out, depending on our release cadence. So yeah, it was something that was long overdue. It had some issues around security patching, longevity, etc. So we needed to do it. At the same time, it's a nice segue to the next feature, which is secure host boot. We've had this at the VM level for at least this 8.4 release. A lot of pressure from the OEM part. It's a little bit about moving away from kind of traditional BIOS boot architectures and moving to UEFI boot. So we had to make sure the hypervisors kind of supporting that and interoperable. So yeah, we've introduced that. So it means we can now kind of boot from a secure sort of shim perspective. Some of the work with Microsoft is still ongoing, but it'll be ready by GA. So at the moment, there are custom certificates you can use just to test the process in the lab to understand how it works and how does that fit your overall kind of security posture in your data center. So, and then the last one really is being a big flagship item for probably about 18 months. Newer support, which when I first saw it was kind of interesting because that's been around in the hypervisor world for a while, but I don't think we'd had some sort of what I'd call pre-release NUMA optimizations. This is now fully supported. So that means we can now recognize NUMA architectures, we can place VMs in an efficient way across NUMA nodes, we can give feedback in terms of NUMA performance. That's going to increase in terms of our ability to kind of optimize that in terms of efficiencies on the AMD and Intel chipsets. So it's just the start of that journey for us. So we're already seeing kind of performance enhancements just in lab testing around sort of 15-20%. So obviously dependent on the NUMA architecture underpinning it and how efficient that is. But yeah, for us, it's part of that first tranche that I showed earlier, which is performance is something we need to focus on heavily. It's something we often get benchmarked against when we're compared to VMware, so and other hypervisors. So it's good to see kind of XenServer 9's out. There's proof of life in terms of adoption. 8.4 was March 24. We're now 26, so you can get a feel for kind of how often we're releasing a major release. That's all good. So yeah, just a quick one here. One of my colleagues put this together around sort of just explains a little bit around the GA for kind of 9 when 8.4 end of life is going to happen sort of the end of 2028. How we see really the phases of customers really. So you've probably got experimental and early adopters for the rest of kind of this year, probably into maybe early 27. At the same time, we'll still be streaming releases, updates to 8.4. We're running basically once we go GA with 9, we'll have 2 GA versions for the rest of 2026 into 27. And for most of 28, actually, because we'll have these at a time with 2 streams. What will happen is we'll pivot between kind of new feature development, obviously for the newer version. Then there'll be discussions about kind of feature backporting and correlation, etc. But yeah, you get an idea. This is just our perspective really around talking to customers how long it takes for a major hypervisor project, which can be the order of several years. So yeah, we'll see whether this is borne out with our kind of telemetry stats. So who's on 8.4 and who's on 9 really. So yeah. I don't know if you got any comments on that, Richard, or all good?
No, that looks good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're down to conscious of time. Conversion demo. It was actually advertised as a live demo, but the interests of, I guess, potentially, we don't want to make any kind of mistakes using our internal kind of labs. I actually recorded this earlier, so we've got this just running from 3 sections of our XenServer conversion manager, which obviously was one of the core tools. We haven't talked about it too much now in the previous slides, but basically it's the kind of ingestion engine for VMware virtual machines. It's a way of kind of converting the format. It's done offline effectively by powering off, and you'll see this the VM. We've got an example here which shows a Windows 11 VM with its TPM being removed, TPM effectively converted and then rebooting effectively or being restarted on the XenServer platform with a new set of tools. So the VMware tools are removed and the XenServer tools are inserted. So this is what shows it's possible. I'm sure Richard can talk about how it was used in the reference customer he'll speak about. So yeah, just
I mean, obviously when you're trying to get people to migrate off of the market leader off of something, you're going to want to make it as easy as possible, right? So having a good conversion manager that can help us make it simpler to migrate is definitely helpful.
So yeah, these are very short. Basically, what we're seeing here is kind of obviously you're familiar with the VMware kind of console, just showing the Windows 11 VM, status on sitting on ESX. We're just going basically look at the device manager, kind of check the tool status, etc. So just going through that. The TPM status as well. So there was actually a notification about removing TPMs before we make the transition, but you'll see here VMware tools just to prove it is a VMware machine that we're starting with and it's not smoke and mirrors. They will shut down the machine basically and we'll show connected to the next one. So that's the very short first demo. Move to the next one. Here we see the XenServer UI. For those that haven't seen it, there's a conversion manager option inside that. Obviously, it's something to install, an appliance that you can install. Once it's been imported, you can then connect to the existing one of your existing vCenter or ESX host if you're doing host-to-host with the correct credentials, VMware credentials. We'll then enumerate all the virtual machines. We've got one here as the target because it's a Windows 11 migration demo. So we see it selected here. Some warnings here about kind of from a TPM perspective. I've completed all necessary actions. I'm ready to proceed. Do you want any BitLocker issues? There is kind of some storage and network selections about which networks do you want to attach it to, and then there'll be a little alert around tools migration, basically in tools installation. So here we see a screen. Do you want the tool actually to download and update? Do you want to do it manually or automatically? Most people choose automatic, so it downloads the tools, gives you the summary. Yeah, and then kind of off we go. So yeah, I think the next is finished. Here we go. Yeah, so it's just showing you the Windows tool, shows you the start time. It's still, you can see it in progress bar about how long it's taking to do that. Then it'll read disk writes, etc. The actual import process is running. So this is speeded up. I think we used quite a light one to make sure it didn't take like a long time if it was a very large disk. So now we see it's complete. Yeah, it's been imported. So the next demo basically shows the virtual machine being powered up. Good. Go to the next one. Last one. So yeah, this is basically just checking the tool status on the converted VM. And now I've got the VM in the hierarchy inside XenServer. So we power it up. I'll just scroll through it for the purposes of waiting for the Windows to boot. Go through the Windows login administration. Yep. Yeah, it runs a script basically, a PowerShell script or a batch script to do the VM tools installation. I think which is something it was a checkbox item on the previous wizard. Obviously, you can do this manually. Going through, so yeah, we get a little warning about do you want to accept remote desktop connections. And as the last check, just to show installed apps that the tools that have been reinstalled for this converted VM are, in fact, XenServer tools. There we go, XenServer VM tools present as one of the installed apps. So, yeah, the tools conversion has been successful. So yeah, that's the end of the demos really, just to show a very quick, slimmed down Windows 11 migration. Again, this can be scaled up. Richard will talk about the actual technical challenges of doing that at scale in terms of his section. So yeah, over to you, Richard. Then yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it. That's some good stuff there. I definitely appreciate having the conversion tool, and most people who are going to be looking at trying to move an environment over would definitely make good use of a conversion tool to have that capability. So I'm going to talk today about a migration that we at Ferroque did for a very large customer of ours. It's a large engineering firm. They had 400, greater than 450 VMware hosts. They were spread across 3 data centers in Las Vegas, London, and Sydney. So you can see it was not just spread across 3 data centers, but it was spread across the globe at the same time. The workloads that we moved over, primarily it was Citrix VDI, and they were with GPU-backed desktops, but there were also VMware workloads or standard server workloads, so like SQL and file servers and stuff like that, that also got moved over as part of this. And they definitely had a high graphics requirement for this. As you can imagine, an engineering firm is going to need to have that GPU-backed desktop capability in there. And the biggest driver for them, as we discussed earlier, was they were coming up on their VMware renewal, and they'd gotten their price tag and didn't like it. And so they asked us if there was a way that we could go ahead and help them migrate their environment over to XenServer. And the amazing part of this one was we actually migrated all 450 of those hosts and got everything converted over in about an 8 week period. So we did a lot of work. We had two guys working two different shifts, migrating machines, because the other requirement was that they couldn't buy new hardware. So we had some hosts that they had taken out of production. We put those in with XenServer, migrated a workload over to it. Then those hosts got migrated over. Then the next host, basically did a cascading rollover from VMware over to XenServer. So, in at Ferroque Systems, whenever we do any kind of consulting engagement, we follow a standard consulting methodology where we're going to come in and we advise you on what kind of plans that you have. We'll do an evaluation on what you're working with, where you guys are at, what are your goals, what kind of options would you like to have, and then we'll come up with an implementation plan where we'll assess your current environment, design up the new environment for you, and then deploy it out and get it going. And then once we're done with that, we don't want to just get you up and going and everything and hand you off. So we'll help you to know how to manage and monitor it. We'll train your personnel on how to run your environments and keep things going, and also routinely optimizing and updating your environment to make sure that you're running at peak efficiency whenever possible. All right. With the XenServer migration, we did follow a layered approach where we went through and looked through all of the different pieces that we needed to. We evaluated the hosts and the storage and networking. Each of those had their individual environments and pieces that we had to evaluate. We spent a good amount of time with our two experts and the customers' experts, understanding what their current environment was, where they were going, and what kind of features and capabilities we needed to make sure were available there. So some of the things that we went through on their environment, as I mentioned before, there were three primary data centers in Las Vegas, London, and Sydney. They did also have a small data center in Mumbai that we moved over as well. They had a standardized compute, so most of their hosts were identical. They were 48 core with up to 2 TB of RAM. They had a requirement in from the beginning, and we were able to maintain that requirement of no more than 2 to 1 of virtual to physical CPU overcommit. They did, because of their engineering and the high end demands that they had there. We had to make sure that we had a very low overcommit on the CPU side and no overcommit on the memory. And of course, I don't think I'm saying anything there that nobody really likes overcommitting memory. I don't care who your hypervisor is. If you start caching or having to overcommit your memory, buy more memory. It's a better way to go. We had the GPU-enabled clusters with both the NVIDIA A40s and T4 devices, and we had several different sizes that we had to slice those up to hand them out virtually on the virtual desktop side. All of the servers had 4 10 gig NICs in 2 sets of LACP, so that we could communicate there. They do use a Dell Power Store for storage, and so we use iSCSI storage on there with snap mirrors to do the replication from place to place as we needed to. We did have some guardrails on the environments, and the recommendation is to keep, especially with a GPU backed desktops like we were working with, to try and keep the number of hosts per pool under 16, and that's so that the overhead of maintaining what's running on which hosts and so forth is kept lower. We did have some surprisingly to me, we had to resize some of their oversized VMs. They had some VMs that had more than 48 cores assigned to them, and XenServer cannot overcommit physical. So if you have 48 physical cores, the largest machine you can do is 48 virtual cores. So we did have to resize a couple of their machines, make them a little bit smaller, not so many CPUs when we did the migration. Okay, so one of the things that we kind of went through a little bit there when we did the pool sizing when we went through uh, being cognizant of that 2-to-1 CPU overcommit and the maximum of 16 hosts per pool. We then went in and organized the different pools up into what kind of workloads were they have. We had some workloads that were for GPU-backed desktops, and even there we had some larger GPU-backed desktop pools. It's easy for me to say, right? Uh, we had some that were just standard desktops that didn't have a GPU associated with them, and then we had some pools that were set up for the non-VDI workloads, for servers and back-end resources that were needed there. Some of the other lessons learned that we ran into, we did evaluate whether or not we should go with NFS or iSCSI when we did the testing on the environment because the PowerStore does support both iSCSI and NFS. We found that the performance was better and the capabilities were better available for us to run it on an iSCSI based. We also only had the 4 10 gig NICs available. And later on, after we did the migration and everything, we ran into the issue with the where we had initially when you create an HA set with the pool on XenServer, you have to have a shared storage resource for them to keep that HA information on. And what we found once we got these pools, the larger pools loaded up with hosts or with VMs going on it, that having that HA LUN and the storage LUN for the VMs as the same LUN gave us some performance issues. So we are going back and we're actually creating a small 10 gig LUN for every one of those pools to share their HA information on, so that we can help optimize that speed and everything. We did have initially we were looking at doing GFS2 because of some of the capabilities and advantages it brings to us, but we wound up having to switch back to LVM because it was causing a performance issue for us. We do have multipath redundancy set up with the 2 10 gig NICs going on there, and then we relied on the storage side of things to do the thin provisioning to help us reduce the amount of space taken up by the VMs. On the networking side, our initial plan was to use the two of the NICs and the LACP for both storage and management, because for the storage you actually have to have a management IP on there. So we thought, well, we'll just do management on the one set and then do 2 NICs on the LACP for the VM traffic. What we ran into there was very quickly found out that having a large MTU on your management NIC is not a good idea. So we wound up having to go ahead and move the management over to the same pair of NICs as the VM traffic. And then, of course, from the management NIC standpoint, it's not just the Zen Center communications that are going across, but think of Zen Motion, moving VMs back and forth between there. Also needed that higher speed 10 gig NICs. But we needed to get them switched over to where the VM traffic was. Best practices going forward as the customer goes to continue on from here, future purchases and everything, we'll actually have a total of 6 10 gig NICs or faster if we can get 25 or 40s out there, so that we can have 2 for storage, 2 for management, and 2 for the VM traffic. So the key takeaways on there, obviously, we were able to get XenServer is viable at enterprise level. This customer is now currently running with XenServer, backing all their resources. We got over 450 hosts moved over. We were able to do it in a very quick manner. Obviously the conversion manager came in handy there. On the virtual desktop side, we were able to convert over, for your PBS or your MCS image, get it over to where it needed to be on there, and then reproduce it from the Citrix or CVAD side of things, but also for your SQL environments, your file servers, and so forth. Being able to bring that information over, carry that information over into the environment, and as Ashley demonstrated earlier, the ability to pull off the VMware tools and put in the XenServer tools without having any major issues on there was definitely very helpful. Obviously, this is a very GPU heavy environment. There was a lot of resources. These guys really worked these servers hard, as you can imagine, with CAD and engineering functionalities that they needed to. The migration from VMware, I would recommend if you can do it, try and time it with the hardware refresh as well, so that you're not having to do the cascade, because that definitely added a degree of difficulty into our migration. And it also, if you're in a I need to be able to fail back kind of situation, that really limits you, because you're lower on the hardware capabilities and everything, and your storage. Definitely take a good look. We spent probably the first week testing out the environment, making sure, was GFS2 going to work? Was LVM a better choice? Was iSCSI or NFS the better choice? Coming through all that and everything, so that we could make sure that we were successful once we started the migration. All of the workloads were there, all of the performance was there. We'd let the customers test out the desktops and everything as well, on each of the different storage ideas, on each of the different networking ideas, proposals and so forth, so we can make sure that what they got was the best performance they could get out of those machines. And then the obviously the ability for the upcoming roadmap. I told Ashley, I said I've downloaded. I got my XenServer 9 sitting right here, getting ready to deploy it up in my lab to give it some try. Uh, Definitely recommend taking a look at XenServer 8.4. Some of the capabilities that they've added in there have been very nice. With XenServer 9 with the new functions and so forth. I'm really looking forward to where we go from here on that. Okay, so for next steps, what we'd like you to you guys to take away from this, if you would like to get an assessment on is a migration a possibility, please feel free to reach out to Faroque. Obviously, we have the skill set available to help you migrate from VMware over to XenServer, and we can help you evaluate whether how your licensing functions in there, what would be the capabilities, and what would be the best method to go on there. Also, I would highly recommend that you do the XenServer 9 preview, and I'm sure Ashley and the team would love as many people as possible to kick the tires on this pre-release, so they can find out if there's any catches. I did notice one thing when I was imaging. When I was imaging my little disk here, it imaged it with XenServer 8 instead of 9 for the name. So that'd be a quick fix, but different things help identify what those are, and I'm sure there's a method to upload your input to the team, and it's nice to be able to say, hey, I like this feature, could it go this way, and so forth, to kind of add some of that feedback to the team, so to help make the product better to go in the future. And so please feel free to engage Ferroque Systems on any of your environments or migration questions or anything that you have. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do some of these questions. We did have quite a few come through here, and I marked several of them for answering live. The first question, Ashley, that we were asked was, can we use SolarWinds to monitor XenServer?
So yeah, I just answer with some text, I think. So SolarWinds is one
Okay.
of the partners we're talking to. So at the moment, I think it's still in a state of flux. So from a monitoring perspective, so we've got a number of kind of core partners: Victoria Metrics, Splunk, SolarWinds, etc. And ultimately, a lot of the ecosystem work that I mentioned on my section is very much around actually encouraging the partner, in this case SolarWinds, whatever, to kind of write an integration module. So we don't write the integration module ourselves. Obviously, we expose kind of the API sets, and that's something for the partners to decide from a business decision. What's their, is this something they think there's enough market segmentation of it to justify the investment? So yeah, that's why these things take a while. A good example is Veeam and backup. That was kind of been bubbling for sort of a year and a half. It's now in prototype, I think, with some additional pushing from Vape's XCP&G, who also share the same kind of core code base. So yeah, at the moment, the answer is no, but it's on our radar. I think. Sure.
Okay. And then, of course, going along, it seems like a lot of these are on the partner ecosystem questions here. The next one was, I was wondering if there was any plans to integrate a software-defined storage for shared local storage. And in fact, Ashley and I had talked about this as we were getting ready for the webinar, whether there was one. I am familiar with the Starwind offering that they have. It does work with XenServer if you're interested in that. But again, as mentioned here, that would be a different license, right? You'd have to license that product separately. So, do you want to speak to that, Ashley?
Yeah, it's interesting. SDS is kind of an interesting software one storage. It fits under the umbrella a little bit of kind of, we talked about it for HCI in that sort of hyper-converged storage. So there's a question about would we offer it natively as kind of a part of the XenServer product suite, a la kind of Nutanix, Acropolis and VMware vSAN. There are no immediate plans on the roadmap to do that because that would be quite a significant storage kind of product rewrite. But we're watching that space and looking at acquisitions and see if there's some way we can kind of accelerate that, but not at the moment.
Okay, so the next question was had to do with XenServer and HPE's OneView. If you're familiar with OneView, OneView allows you to actually inside HPE's OneView, you could go and do upgrades of firmware and software to the XenServer servers themselves. And so, do you have that? Is that on the roadmap?
It's a very interesting question. We've had literally, I think, one or two inquiries about this, probably in the last sort of 6 or 8 months. So it's not what I call a strong demand signal from our customer base at the moment. The answer is no. We have approached HP to understand what would be required to do that. Again, it's an HP decision about kind of collaborating with. So at the moment, we collaborate with them on storage and service from an OEM sort of interop perspective. But so I don't have any more updates on that apart from it just do some preliminary discussions. But at the moment, the answer is no.
Okay, and then are there many customers that use XenServer without CVAD? And so, I guess so. There would be a licensing question on that as well that goes with the XenServer if I did not have CVAD.
Uh, okay, interesting question. So yeah, I don't know if the question is can customers use it without Citrix CVAD? I mean, there were two aspects of that question. One is the licensing, obviously, to get XenServer, you need to buy the kind of the Citrix bundle licensing models, whether that's kind of CPL, UHMC, for example, kind of cloud licensing. So you buy into the kind of Citrix product stack model. But I think if it's a question about can XenServer be used for workloads that are not just CVAD, the answer is yes. Well, I spoke about it earlier. We've got many customers that are running non-CVAD applications on XenServer. So there's two things. One is a kind of cost license accessibility question, and there's a workload kind of interoperability question. So the workload interoperability, yes. Clearly, to get access to XenServer, you've got to buy into the Citrix kind of product suite. So it's not sold anymore as a standalone software license. I think might be the reason behind the question. So that's the
Okay.
answer to that.
All right, and then the next question was: are there any plans to add a web console like Xen Orchestra? And you mentioned XCP-ng and earlier that you guys are kind of in the same running in the same namespace or the same code base, et cetera.
Sure. So they are I mean, Vates, obviously, many people use Xen Orchestra. I mean, effectively, use XCP-ng as a fork, kind of Xen, ecosystem fork of commercial XenServer, which is the Citrix version. There are other versions out there for automotive, all sorts of kind of use cases for Xen. But yeah, the answer to the question is that interestingly, the functionality of Xen Orchestra, the web-based UI, is something that I mentioned in the context of the management framework. So there's a big project ongoing about refreshing management. I talked about kind of Xen Center as being quite a dated model in terms of kind of Windows-based architecture. It's something we look at refreshing. Probably it's going to be sort of 18 sort of months kind of time frame from now about seeing the first kind of fruitions of that. But if we hope to get some MVPs and prototypes out before that. But yeah, it's definitely a number one stroke two radar project item from the XenServer perspective to revamp the whole web UI interface look and feel. Basically, we are very aware that the hypervisors do that, so that's something that's going to take us a little while, but we'll get there.
Okay. The next question is going to be: does XenServer support using a DFS namespace for your ISO storage repository?
Yeah, it's interesting I see this one because I'm sure I've seen an email about this today from I might know the individual who might have submitted that question. I think he might be present on the webinar. So that's something I need to check actually. So I only saw that come in today. First time I've seen the question. I assume that's Microsoft Distributed File System.
Yeah, distributed file
DFS,
system.
yeah. So that's clearly kind of a non-UNC type model, isn't it? So it's really to be supporting nomenclature. I don't know the answer to that question right now. We have to check. I haven't seen it before, so given the fact that I haven't seen it before and no one's asked it, I suggest the answer is probably no, which might mean that it's an RFE, request for feature enhancement from if you're a Citrix customer, you can raise that the Citrix team so that can get on our kind of products feature radar.
Yeah, I think so. It does follow somewhat of a UNC stuff,
Yeah, exactly.
being
Yeah.
able to get there, but there's kind of a tricky piece to it, to where it could come into issue there. I know the two options you have there obviously are CIFS and NFS for your ISOs, but yep,
Yeah.
that would be a good question, good thing to see. The next question is, can the image portability service be used to migrate PVS images from VMware to XenServer?
Uh, Interesting question, actually. So, interesting point. Yeah, I'm just reading the question now. PVS images. So it is
Yeah.
possible to do kind of PVS. There's a PVS transportation type model, but it's not using kind of the core IPS. So it is possible to migrate PVS images to kind of unsealing and resealing the image.
Hmm.
I'll have to kind of look into that a little bit more. I'm trying to think. I'm not an expert in terms of some of the Citrix product lines and IPS. I know about MCS, PVS, app layer, some of the other tools
Hmm.
that are interacting with XenServer. But I think, yeah, we did what I call a portability option, which is kind of adjacent to IPS. So I think there is a methodology. Whether it's documented on our documentation sites is a good question. I'll have to check. But yeah, I think it's possible. It might not be native kind of IPS, but yeah, if somebody can contact us kind of after this webinar or whatever, we can certainly kind of look into that, and someone can give some feedback details. We'll get back to them on that.
Yeah, I could say the migration that we did, it was MCS that
Yeah.
they were using. They were not using PCS or PBS. So, all right. And then the last question is, any we never had any great success with Commvault integration. Are there any improvements in version 9?
Ooh, that's a good question, actually. As I was reading it, I thinking that's interesting because Commvault are one of the backup vendors actually that have made arrangements or in terms of integrations. So if you go to the Commvault website, if you look on our documentation under backup sections, you'll see a published list of backup vendors, and I'm fairly sure that Commvault has a kind of integrated hypervisor backup. So I'm not sure what they mean by not successful. I haven't had any feedback from any kind of Commvault stroke XenServer customers about problems with it. I guess that might be more of a question for Commvault, but the nine
Hmm.
angle is an interesting one. There are no what I call changes to the Commvault integration stack in terms of kind of API integration that I'm aware of. I mentioned kind of some of the key things that have been coming out for 9. But if you've got kind of two escalation paths, so you can escalate into kind of Citrix, and we'll look into kind of if it should be a supported configuration, but equally if it's a Commvault setup a configuration, it might be more of a question for Commvault than us. But it's an
Okay.
interesting one. Not seen that before. But yeah.
All right. So and I think oh, here we have a hardware snaps SAN integration just came in right under the wire. About to
Oh
sign off
yeah,
on the
yeah.
questions.
So hardware snap sign integration. I'm
Yeah, so
assuming
the
that
ability in from XenServer to issue a a
right, yeah,
snapshot.
yeah. This is kind of like the AAI, isn't it,
Yeah.
from VMware, whatever kind of
Hmm.
integrated API into the SAN vendor sort of firmware. Kind of at the moment we don't have any capabilities to do that, and it's not something that's on our roadmap per se. Again, we're driven by kind of feature requests that come through our customer channels, and I don't think I'll be honest. We've got many hundreds that come in. Don't think I've seen anybody request that, but yeah, it's something we can look into. But at the moment, the answer is no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be personally, I would say that would be a good thing to take a look at the ability to.
It's an interesting one. It's come up in
Yeah.
conversations before, but as I say, we have to be quite
It's very
pragmatic
it's very
about
nice
what
to be
we're
able
doing.
to,
Yeah,
you right click your VM and say snapshot, and that snapshot occurs on the SAN
yeah.
instead of from the VM from the XenServer side.
It's basically a
Almost
CPU offload, isn't it?
right.
CPU offload.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
until
it
they.
takes that a lot easier. Yeah. Oh, Jose says that yes, XenServer and IPS PVS works.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
So, all right. Yeah. I know that both Ashley and I are on LinkedIn. We'd love for you to go out to our LinkedIn profiles and follow us to find out for more information. You can reach out to us as well if you got some questions for us here at Faroque. We saw the Heroic hello at FaroqueSystems.com. Go ahead and reach out there. My email, if you would like to ask me some questions specifically, is going to be rfaulkner at FaroqueSystems.com. And we appreciate all the time that you guys have spent with us here. We did have one more. Which backup solution has best efficiency with XenServer?
Yeah, I'm just reading. I was pulling it up. Which backwards is best efficiency? It's important for case migration. VMware. That's an interesting one. So basically, we're being asked which of the backup vendors are the most efficient. So from our
Yeah.
perspective, we've got a kind of a sort of a pragmatic approach. So from our backup efficiency is something that's obviously driven more from the backup vendor
Mhm.
integration perspective. So we don't really have any kind of comments about which is more efficient. More the question we get generally is we have a backup vendor of X is our strategic backup vendor. Do you integrate with it? Yes or no? It's very rare that customers come to us and say, actually, can you
Yeah.
recommend a backup solution? So yeah, we have to
I've
remain
also
agnostic about that. But
And I've seen that a lot of times the better backup efficiency is to ignore the hypervisor and just have the backup talk directly to the SAN and then back up that way, and get that information, pull it from a snapshot on the SAN, get the data backed up from the SAN, and then not involve the hypervisor at all in those situations. But yep,
I
I
mean,
can
yeah,
see.
I mean, ultimately, are you doing like a raw run backup? Are you doing like a VM? Do you need constructs within the VM,
Yeah.
files, structure folders? Do you need things like Microsoft kind of Quiesce snapshots? Depends what the customer's looking for, I guess, in that perspective. We don't offer any comparative sort of backup vendors, but yeah, good question also.
Yeah, and I don't think you would want to pick one over another either.
No, exactly. Yeah, we have to
Yeah,
be very
as the
yeah
that wouldn't be a good
equitable.
idea
That's what
for
I'm looking
for
for.
Citrix or XenServer to pick somebody a winner. All right, I think that's all we have, Aaron.
Yeah. If you want to go ahead and hit the next slide, Ashley, that has
Sure.
our emails and phone numbers and all of that. If you have any other follow-up questions, we will be sending you an email with the resources mentioned before. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us. We really appreciate you.